Hey, gals and guys, this is Michael Ferrari of Cinema to Meep. Welcome to the latest episode of the Retro Movie Love podcast. Joining me today is David Nofire. Welcome back to the podcast, David.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah, this is the first time we've
This is
done this.
the first time we've actually met in person, but it's the first time we're actually recording a podcast in person, sort of on camera, which is nice. Glad we could do that. It's kind of a new adventure here at Retro Movie Love. New frontier, final frontier, if you will. Not to give away what we're talking about. Well, you guys know what we're talking about today. This is kind of a little bit of a different one for us, kind of like a loose and easy kind of episode. It's not too much structure. I'll add in some trailers like for the audio version and some songs, obviously. So for those of you who want to listen to it on just the podcast as itself, you couldn't hear all that stuff. But for the video podcast, we're just going to take it easy, have some drinks, talk about some 1982 movies, and just, enjoy what a great year it was for film in general, but specifically talk about the summer because it is truly going down in the history of film. It is truly a special summer for movies. Unparalleled, would you say, in terms of the amount of, I would say, classic films that came out from one summer?
82, 84, 85. Those are all big years.
Pretty big years. 82, I guess, is especially known as a very strong summer for science fiction films. Sci-fi summer, it's often called. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list. We're going to go through this course of the calendar with you guys today, and it's a lot of great science fiction, a lot of great genre films in general. Like you'll see some behind us. You'll see you have a great example right behind you, David. I love that Drew Struzan artwork. It's iconic, and yeah, so good. And then of course I have one there. I have the original poster for that one there, and and you'll see some other 82 things in the background. I just kind of like threw some in the background. Of course, I'm wearing one. It's a big giveaway for what we're talking about. So many great films that have truly become really part of our culture in these last 40 years. Iconic films, important films for many reasons, and certainly they touched a lot of people's lives, not just a handful of people. We know famously some of these movies were not hits when they came out. Some of them were obviously very big hits, but it was a special time because they were movies that were kind of maybe slipped under the radar, but also movies that were really good and hits at the same time. So it was kind of interesting. Of course, nowadays it's a different story because you get a lot of big movies that have to survive, have really strong weekends, or they disappear really quickly, or they just are on streaming. There's a lot. It's like a very strange world we're living in with movies right now. And there's certainly a lot more movies being released these days through all the platforms, through all the streaming things, through whatever areas they can get things out, or call it content. But the content that we had in theaters was pretty amazing. I mean, we weren't quite yet frequenting video stores in 82. I certainly wasn't yet. And so we relied heavily on going to the movies to see our movies or watching things on cable, which I didn't have in 82. I didn't have it until much later. And so I really had to go to a movie theater to watch movies. And of course, being such a movie fan, a movie fanatic so early in my life, I had to go to the theater. And luckily, I've talked about it on this podcast many times. I've lived in Hell's Kitchen, Times Square area. So there were plenty of theaters for me to go see. Oh, God, so many movies and all kinds of movies. And so I was pretty fortunate to have that experience. And I really cherished that because in 82, I was 7, and it was a pretty young age, but it was a very impressionable age. And looking at my kids now, I have two kids who are 7 and 10. You can really see how much the media that they love really connects to them and really kind of shapes who they are in interesting ways. So seven's a really important age for that, for me at least, and I could see it in my kids. So it's kind of interesting. And this year coinciding, whoops, something dropped. There's a poltergeist possibly in this room. You could see it. Yeah, just these movies is really just leaving a mark on a lot of us, and with our, whatever ages we were at the time. So, and some of us weren't even born. Some of us, we caught up to them on video, we caught up to them on cable, and they really struck a chord. And 82 was full of them, not even just the summer. So it's just kind of cool to see that just one time, little space and time, had so many great films. So we're just gonna get right into that. I want to just touch briefly with your experience in 82. How, I mean, you were pretty young.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I didn't see any of these at the theater except for ET, and that was probably, well into its release.
Mhm.
I remember these movies coming out, but yeah, I didn't get to go to the theater that much then.
But then you have caught up with them on video, and
Oh yeah. A lot of these movies have become, staples and cable movies. A lot of these things are like my experience of a lot of these films is through the filter of having seen them on HBO all the time, like Rocky.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Some of these are pretty famous, like movies that played on cable or television all the time. And let's get right into those movies. So we have lists here. I think I posted them on social media and the Patreon page as well, on the Retro Movie Love podcast Facebook page, and then the Patreon page, just the calendar itself. Even though of course May I guess from people, Memorial Day weekend starts May for a lot of summer movies. I went a little further back into May to May 14th. I'm starting there because we didn't quite yet have that idea of Memorial Day weekend as a real launching pad for summer movies. I feel like May 14th and the release of Conan the Barbarian kind of set off the tone for the summer. Considering what kind of movie it is, a big movie, of course, a Dino De Laurentiis production, Arnold Schwarzenegger film. So a pretty big movie. I, I didn't, I did not see that one in the theater. There was something about it that wasn't like my thing. There was a movie that's very similar to it that came out later in the summer. I'll talk about that later, that I did see in the theater and I loved. But for some reason, Conan wasn't speaking to me in 82. I guess I wasn't as familiar with the source material that yet at that age. But I eventually caught up with Conan on video and enjoyed it. How about for you, Conan?
Conan, I that was definitely a cable movie, and I saw it when I was a kid, and parts of it, and I remember seeing like the HBO behind the scenes stuff about how they had the sword, that the blood would come out of the sword, and I remember that more than I remember seeing the actual movie. So
Mm-hmm.
really, that I've seen a couple times recently, fairly recently, and it's not like a huge part of my movie experience, which is odd because I love Arnold, and
Yeah,
most of his other movies are more impactful to me, like Commando, for example. But
sure.
I really do enjoy Conan, um, and especially the writing and direction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's the director's name again?
Um. Oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Someone pull up IMDb. I actually rewatched those movies not too long ago too, because I did a Dino De Laurentiis podcast, and I'm totally blanking on, I think it was Richard Flight. No, John Milius. John Milius.
Amelia.
Yeah.
Usually that name
I
is
know I could forget that. Yeah.
just escaped me.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, very strong filmmaker, very muscular filmmaker in the way, the kinds of stories he likes to tell, and very fitting filmmaker for that tale, I would say. Also on that week, so we have Frankenstein 3D, the Andy Warhol movie was it was given a 3D release where so this is like the period of between 81 and 84 where they were doing many 3D movies. And I was the kid who had to ask and drag my whoever was with my parents or whoever to see every single 3D movie because I had to go see them. I just loved that experience. And it's it's like a novelty, obviously. Um, and a lot of the time the 3D wasn't good. I don't remember the 3D particularly being any good for Frankenstein 3D. But I had to go see it. I can't remember anything else other than I was just excited to go see a 3D horror movie.
That this is a film, well, I assume there were a few others, but that they brought back as a re-release, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not the first one that I would think of, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a gimmick that I like.
yeah.
This weekend, Jaws is coming out in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited about that too.
It's so funny that Jaws 1 is going to be in 3D, where they actually legitimately had a 3D Jaws movie, Jaws 3. Why didn't they bring back Jaws 3
Right on the
as well?
marquee, it says Jaws 3D. So you're expecting Lou Gossett, Bess Armstrong, Dennis Quaid. You're not going to get that this weekend.
The classic of cinema, Jaws 3. Um, you guys know my thoughts on the Jaws movies. I talked about them plenty. But yeah, Frankenstein 3D was not quite the 3D experience of the summer for me. There was a movie that we'll get to later in this calendar that I absolutely loved as a 3D movie, and quite possibly my favorite 3D experience of all those movies, of all those 3D movies. So, on next on the list is The House Where Evil Dwells, a movie that I did not see until like I feel like it was a cable thing, like at my aunt's house at some point. I know it was like a kind of like a haunting with samurai, maybe, or it's like Japanesey. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I think you might have caught up with it.
Right, I did watch it a couple of days ago, and you're right. That is a haunting film. It's actually the other Poltergeist movie of the summer.
Oh, there you go.
This is one that I caught on HBO. I don't think I saw the whole thing, but I remember enough to be disturbed yet intrigued. And I watched it a couple of days ago, and it's not a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a good story, and it's got one very disturbing scene with these giant crabs, which you'll have to see if you haven't refreshed your memory with that one. But yeah, I like the movie. I liked revisiting it this week.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta catch up with that one. There were a lot of movies to watch, and that was kind of wasn't high on my list, so I didn't get to it. Also, the next one is another one. Actually, I've never seen this movie. Wrong is Right, which I do believe is kind of a satiric film starring Sean Connery. It seems quite interesting. It has some political bents that may be very relevant to our times now. So maybe I should watch it. I just wasn't in a very political mood. So, or that kind of mood to watch that kind of movie, but maybe eventually. All right. May 21st. So, okay, May 21st, a big movie came out, a very big budgeted movie too. And I was excited to see it. My sister was even more excited to go see it. This was the movie that she wanted to, she was really happy and psyched to go see. And of course, that's Annie. Of course, Annie, based on the Little Orphan Annie comics, and the big screen adaptation directed by John Huston and starring lots of great people. And a very big, lavish budgeted movie, and lots of great sets and set pieces and dance sequences and music numbers. I was really taken into it while watching it. Like I was into the idea of going to see it because I like those kinds of movies, um, but because it was such a big spectacle of a movie and the music was so fun and so good, I was really like really enjoying it back then. And And yeah, and then over the years, something interesting happened. I guess I watched it too much because my sister really wanted to watch it over and over and over, and I got a little like tired. And it was like a little bit of a joke between us, like how she would just make me watch it all the time, or and it would drive me a little bit crazy because I was a little over it. I was older that by that point, and then eventually, as an adult, I'd watch it every once in a while, and like it just kind of brought me back to being 7 and seeing it in the theater and the really big screen, and it just really kind of takes me back, and it really brings a lot of joy and happiness every time I watch it. And even though at the time it was kind of considered, even though it made money, but it was also considered kind of a failure because it was such a big budgeted movie that it wasn't, it wasn't the hit that they really wanted. They wanted to be a really gigantic film. So it was kind of viewed a little bit as a failure. And so I guess there was some negativity towards it then. I didn't really understand that growing up, because to me it was a solid, very entertaining musical when a time when musicals weren't that popular anymore, like they were. And yeah, I love it. And to this day, I rewatch it again, and I just because it takes me right back. There's like a part in the middle of the movie that's a little bit, it could have been trimmed back, maybe. That's my only real criticism. Like there's like a scene where they go to the Radio City Music Hall, which is a great grand scene, and but they show maybe like a way too much of the movie that they're watching. So it's like a little bit boring at that section, and my kids kind of feel the same way. They get a little bit bored of that section, but then it gets into a great musical number, or like a big set piece towards the end with the villains, and they're fun villains, of course. And it's a real fun blast of a movie. And any negativity it's ever earned because of that inflated budget kind of thing, it really does not deserve it. It's a pure fun musical, and I just actually really adore it. So I love the music. Do you like Annie?
Yeah, I like Annie. I didn't revisit it for this, but I do remember it pretty well. I think that the perception of the movie at the time was that it was a big bomb, but I think that really the reason for that was just because, like you said, I think they overspent.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too big a budget for the film, but I think a smaller budget, it probably would have had a better legacy than it does, or at least is remembered better. I enjoyed it. I like the songs. I got to see the trailer. I watched all the trailers for these, and boy, that's a long one.
Yeah, see, like they could have cut the trailer to like a little, like the movie's a little bit long, but then the trailer's maybe a little bit long, so
Yeah.
or way too long. Showing too much because they want to, because they spent a lot of money on it, so they want you to see as much as you can.
Mhm.
I get that, but it's a wonderful movie. It's still for me. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, the next Steve Martin, Carl Reiner romp, which is a movie that I did not want to go see in the theater. I remember like, no, I'm not going to see this black and white comedy thing with Steve Martin, even though I think I already had seen The Jerk. There were a couple of Steve Martin things that I had seen, and I'm pretty sure The Jerk was one of them. And I remember thinking that was funny, though I'm sure a lot of the humor went over my head too, being that young. And this one certainly was way over my head with being a black and white movie. I didn't really realize that they were incorporating like scenes from classic noirs throughout the film. So it was like, I don't know what this thing is. I don't want to see this movie. And actually, the problem with this one is I I don't know. I think I guess that stuck in my head as a kid, so I didn't we never really gave it a chance over the years. And I watched it recently, and I'm like, this is actually really clever how they pulled that off, incorporating that much stuff from movies and noirs, of course, classic noirs, and of course, and having its own storyline. I thought that was pretty ingenious. Did you watch this one?
I did, yes. Um, I was struck at the beginning by the quality of the names behind the scenes. Some
Yeah.
characters. Edith Head, for example, was her last film. Um, yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I liked how some of the clips were done when you'd have Humphrey Bogart from multiple movies, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If he answers to a different name and they ignore that, it's pretty fun. The
Mm-hmm.
story is impossible to follow because it's just kind of clip after clip. But it's a fun movie. I liked it. It's also one that I didn't really watch when I was a kid. The only thing I remembered was the cleaning woman bit, which was stuck in my brain all this time.
Yeah, there's definitely some. I definitely had some laugh out loud moments while watching it. I was also like Rachel Ward in it as well. The one thing that kind of like that I felt like the movie was missing, like those noirs were great because they always had a great femme fatale, and Rachel Ward's a good, almost femme fatale. I'm not gonna say if she is or not. But the movie's missing because he's always interacting with like classic characters, like mostly male characters, like Humphrey Bogart, for example, and several characters. It's missing that interaction of like the noir guy, the private eye, the dick, and the femme fatale, and like a Barbara Stanwyck, right? Like a real dynamic kind of femme fatale. It's missing that dynamic to this comedy. So I felt like if they had more of that, it would have been maybe a better movie for me. But I definitely, I thought it was what they did with it was pretty smart. But I have more Carl Reiner, Steve Martin movies that I like a lot more. Like The Man with Two Brains, for example. I could watch that one like any day of the week. All of Me, there's quite a few. Um, Moving on, Fighting Back is a movie that I just talked about on a podcast, on a Dino De Laurentiis podcast. Of course, he produced that. His second movie already. 2 weeks in a row, he was dominating trying to dominate the box office, and here he had his kind of. We talked about how it was kind of a vigilante movie, kind of his take on his modern take on Death Wish, and of course with Tom Skerritt in Philadelphia. Have you ever seen that one?
Fighting Back?
Yeah.
Or no, I haven't. I like the cast from the trailer. Yaphet Kotto's in it, right?
Yaphet Kotto, yeah, he has a decent role in it. It's definitely the Tom Skerritt show. Those are good supporting players in it. Patty LuPone is his wife. Yeah, I liked it. I like that one a lot. It's really gritty. It's really mean. It's definitely a movie of its time, and you get a vibe. You really get sense Philadelphia in that movie, and what it was like back then. For more of my thoughts, tune into the Dino De Laurentiis podcast on that one. Gregory's Girl was also released that week, a movie that I hadn't seen I haven't seen in a long time. So I'm gonna have to catch up with that one, another one. And I remember it being kind of a sweet coming of age love story movie from the UK. And then okay, another iconic movie was released. Here it is. It's The Road Warrior, which was known, I think, in almost every other territory as Mad Max 2. But for some reason, we released it as The Road Warrior. And I was not into going to see this movie in the theaters, believe it or not. I don't know what it was. It was something about like post-apocalyptic movies that I was never big on growing up. And I watched a lot of them. There were so many of them, a lot of ripoffs of the Mad Max movies. And so I never really gave the Mad Max movies their fair due. I did rewatch this one. It's been a long time since I've watched any Mad Max movies, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty crazy. It's really over the top. There's so many set pieces. There's very little like real dialogue. It's just a real mean kind of testosterone filled craziness that I guess George Miller was really good at doing with these Mad Max films. And I think he's making another one. So he's like still going with the stuff. So it's still not quite the movie for me, to be honest, only because I do like movies that focus on the characters and have some character development. This one doesn't have really any, but it's really entertaining. It's never boring. It's pretty, I guess balls to the walls, crazy and fun. If you're, yeah, looking for that, and I can see why it totally became a this iconic movie from this time period, and how the Mad Max movies, which I think I remember liking the third Beyond Thunderdome, because there might be a little more character stuff in it. I do remember that. How about for you, The Road Warrior?
The Road Warrior. Well, Mad Max, when I was a kid, that was too much for me. It was like there were certain movies that were just sort of too intense, and
Mm-hmm.
that's and so Road Warrior, I definitely saw on cable and liked it, and then just sort of over time have liked it more and more.
Yeah.
And I did get to see it at New Beverly back in April, so maybe three
Oh,
months ago. That was on a Mad Max triple feature, and that was no, it was all four. It was all
oh
four of
my
the movies,
gosh. Wow.
and that was amazing. That was the best audience experience. Was the Road Warrior? People were just floored by some of the stuff at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely really enjoy this movie. I see what you mean about like not being totally endeared to it. It takes a while, but I mean some of this the stuff at the end is just so spectacular that it just sort
Yeah.
of puts it definitely on my list. Um, yeah, it's a it's an amazing experience, amazing audience experience. If you ever get to see it with a crowd of people who are into that thing, you'll have a great time.
I feel like this is a movie really for the big screen, and the loud with the very loud music, and the crunching, and the action, and the set pieces. Like, it really is a movie for a big screen, and seeing it at home with some distractions may not be the best way to do it. So yeah, yeah, if it ever screens like maybe doing like all the men, I don't know if I could try. I'll try. Um, I'll try to do them. I do need to revisit the other ones. But I could totally see why it's become the movie it is. It's it's pretty amazing what George Miller pulled off in that movie. Quite honestly, The Secret Policeman's Other Ball came out that day, and then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had a re-release um, that weekend. So you get to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in theaters. So what some people don't remember is that back in the 80s, there a lot of things got re-released, because yes, the video store wasn't quite as the thing it became as it became later in the 80s. So a lot of movies you had to go see by going to see them in the theater. So they would often re-release things, or have like kind of big, like Disney certainly did it a lot. And there's like even a Disney movie this summer. They would just re-release things in theaters, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it became such a cult movie by this point. Just like, I guess, what, 8 years later, had a re-release, and so you had the option of going to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the theaters that weekend, which was really cool. And of course, we know what that film is. Okay, May 28th, we have The Escape Artist, which was a Francis Ford Coppola production, a movie that I did see when it came out, and I remember liking it, but not remembering much about it, other than it was like a kind of like a pretty movie about a kid who has kind of an adventures in a way. Um, I just didn't really remember too much about it. And then I watched it on DVD like a few years ago. I picked up the DVD, and I was like, yeah, again, really beautifully shot, and beautifully made. And I really enjoyed it. I remember really getting into the story, and liking it. So kind of a gem. Maybe a Blu-ray release will help bring it back into some spotlight. Have you seen that one?
No, actually, I don't think I'd ever heard of that one until I saw it on your list.
Yeah, that was one that I think Francis Ford Coppola produced a few things, and directed a few things at this time too, where they weren't all like doing so well, and that's kind of like helped sink Zoetrope, and so unfortunately, that was one of the ones that didn't do so well. But yeah, I could see what he was trying to trying to do with it. So kind of a really well made movie that caters to kids, but it's not condescending, which is nice. Kids movies were different back then. They weren't all like kind of cartoony kind of movies. They were animated films, and we're gonna get to one soon. But they were like films that were like, adults could enjoy too, like, which is nice. That week, also a movie called Lucky Star and Maya, and then a pretty big sequel. Since sequels were very much a thing in the 80s, we got the second sequel to Rocky with Rocky 3. And I know I went to see it in the theater. What was your first experience with Rocky 3?
This was an HBO experience for me, but it was kind of an HBO everyday experience
Yes.
all the time.
I remember that just every time I go to my aunt's house who had the cable, where I just watch cable movies there. And yeah, it was on all the time.
Yeah, this one was sort of the supercharged Rocky because the first two are very dramatic. The pace is different, and this one seems to go in a different direction. And for me, it was just sort of addictive to watch that movie.
Yeah. And it was like, I just remember it's like montages and that's kind of all the things that you really like about the first two Rocky movies, and cutting out a lot of the boring parts and just kind of having a lot of just like the fun stuff in a movie, like a 90 something or whatever it was. It felt kind of short, like 90 something a minute movie. So I was immediately like into it. I was into Mr. T as Clubber Lang. I mean, that was like, yeah, iconic villain, so aggressive and mean, and yeah, and fun though at the same time. And yeah, it has some stakes, of course, with Burgess Meredith dying, and then like, then he has to defend his title, get his title back from Clubber Lang. And yeah, it's a fun movie. It's such a fun movie. Revisiting it, I was like, wow, this is like exactly what movies should be like these days. It should be like 90 something minutes, full of montages and entertaining, and just not, just take out the boring stuff. You don't need it. You don't always need it. Rocky 2, like, is a great movie, but it was like actually had something to say. So they got that out of the way. They got the movie where they actually had like they were trying to make a statement, have a point, so they can get to the third one, which is like all fun, and the fourth one, which is all fun too, and in another way. So yeah, my wife and I, we couldn't remember what the montages were in this one. Like, was it the one with the tires? Like, we couldn't remember. We were mixing up 3 and 4, and the 3, with the stuff on the beach is like hilarious and perfect at the same time. The freeze frames and just the working out and the training montages are so good, and the actual boxing is just like great, and it has Hulk Hogan.
Thunderlips, Ultimate Male.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy, that scene, because suddenly, like, I'm like, is this a wrestling movie now? Like, what's going on? I forgot about that. Like, it's so entertaining.
With all these so many Rocky movies, and I think the hard thing to do is how is each one unique? How is each one different? And this took an interesting approach, and this one's about someone who has success and how do you hold on to that success. And so I think that all the Rocky movies have a certain angle that they're going for, and that one was
Right. But like, he stuck a little message in there, but it wasn't like the focus of the movie, but it was like there, and it was like enough for you to enjoy, which I like, because they were the Rocky movies. What people forget, they're actually kind of smart, and there were commentaries in their time periods too, which is nice. I like that. What do you feel? How do you feel about the Creed movies? Curious about.
Oh, I enjoyed the Creed movies. I haven't really revisited them. I think I saw both of them twice in theaters and haven't really gone back to them since.
Yeah, I remember liking the first one enough, but the second one I remember like thinking, oh, they really kind of like, yeah, they had a misstep with that one. So maybe I need to revisit it. I'm kind of curious. I know they're thinking of doing another thing, or maybe like thinking of doing a Drago movie.
They either have shot or are shooting another Creed movie, and the Drago movie was announced, and there was some backlash about that from Sylvester Stallone, who started making comments about Irwin Winkler. And so I don't know what the status of that movie is, if it's going to happen, but there's already some bad blood with that one.
Well, it's unfortunate because I would kind of be into watching that movie actually more than Creed 3 because I wasn't a fan of Creed 2. Okay, and then let's see what we got. Rock, and then Visiting Hours was the last movie that week. Now Visiting Hours is to me an iconic um 80s slasher movie. It's I saw it in the theater and I was already like a fan of slasher movies as a little kid because this is a time period where everything's like again very impressionable and like I was watching so many of these movies because they were just like new movies out that week, and we would go to the movies and see everything. And so okay, we're gonna see whatever the new movie is, and this week it's a slasher movie. Okay. And so I watched Visiting Hours, and it's pretty intense at times. It's got a pretty evil villain with help me out with Michael Ironside. Thank you. And late, my brain's not the best today. Trying though, trying. So Michael Ironside is a really great villain, and had a really good poster. I remember. I wish I actually owned the poster now because of that, because of just seeing the poster as a kid. Like, oh, I love that poster, and I should have hung it up too with Poltergeist. Yeah, it's a good movie because it has Lee Grant in it, and she's great, and I love her, and she's a really good actress, and she's giving it her all as a kind of an anchor woman in peril type of sorts, and just I love a movie set in like a situation like a hospital. I unfortunately, when I was 5, got into a bad accident with a truck ran over me in the middle of New York City in Midtown.
Wow.
It was a tractor trailer. So it was a very big truck, and it pinned my leg underneath the truck. And unfortunately, but I was young enough where I survived it, obviously, but I was in the hospital for 6 months with my leg in traction for a long time. So I spent a good deal of time in the hospital. I had that experience already as a kid, and and so it was like creepy, like really creepy. Like of course movies like this and Halloween 2 really capitalized on that, but there was something comforting at the same time with that creepiness because I lived it for so long in my youth, just like spending all that time in a very dark hospital. Like I know a lot of the horror movies of that time period are often accused of like over underlighting them, have it being very empty, but I remembered that as a kid at a certain point in time at night, when everyone's gone, certain wards of the hospital, and certainly the ward I was in, because I guess we had kids in that ward. It was quiet at night and mostly dark. And I remember doing crazy things like doing like wheelchair races at night because like there was no one around. Like there was maybe one nurse on duty or something. And this is like a New York City hospital too, so this is not even like Canada. So it was kind of like so those movies kind of like portrayed hospitals in this creepy way, which most people think can't or not. But I don't know. I felt like I did have that experience, and these movies tapped into that for me. So Visiting Hours is like visiting my childhood in a weird way, and yeah, I love it. Are you a fan of that one?
I've only seen that movie once. Of course, I remember the poster, and the trailer is basically the poster as well. The that is the building, and the lights are on, and it makes a skull.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty great. I saw it a few years ago, and I thought that it was kind of more than average brutal for the time.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of I was kind of taken aback. Just I was like, wow, that's really this killer is really really bad. Like not
Yeah.
they're all just very cruel.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly or not. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, but yeah, he certainly was effective.
Yeah, I mean, he has a misogynistic character and really hates women, and there's like definitely some issues that Michael Ironside kind of in his performance kind of flashes here and there, and he's like sometimes he's like donning like women's earrings and jewelry and makeup, so he has definitely some problems with women clearly, and he's targeting Lee Grant because she's very outspoken, and so it's an interesting movie because it has something to say at the same time while being a cheap Canadian slasher. So I like those. I like the mix of that. I just thought it was a kind of a well done one, and even though it had a misogynistic streak, and mostly I guess because you get to see some from the killer's point of view, and that's get into his world a little bit, and that's kind of what might turn some people off. But I think the movie has a good balance because you do care about um, uh, the adults in the movie, the Lee Grant and her jerky boyfriend William Shatner, who's gonna be on this list soon. um, so June 4th. Speaking of June 4th, Chan is Missing was released, and then Hanky Panky was the Gene Wilder comedy, and Gilda Radner movie, which I did see in the theater and don't remember much. Kind of like a murder mystery comedy thing. Um, I remember something about that. I need to catch up with those. I've been meaning to do like a revisit of like the Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor movies. So maybe I'll do like a Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder, and then like the Gilda Radner and Gene Wilder movies like all together, like maybe a podcast. We'll see. So I'm kind of saving for that. Did you ever see that one? Just curious.
No, I haven't seen that one, and I think the only one that kind of comes to mind that I've seen recently was Woman in Red, the Gilda Radner Gene Wilder movie.
Yeah.
But I think I've seen just bits and pieces of that on cable, the Hanky Panky.
Yeah, I definitely played more on cable. I think I got a little bit lost in the theaters because of a certain movie that's coming up, a certain two movies that are coming up this week. Kind of buried it. And the first one of those movies is right here. That's right. Steven Spielberg / Toby Hooper's Poltergeist. I'm going to be diplomatic and say those two names in that order. So you can leave it up to you, leave it up to that. But yeah, so Poltergeist came out, and of course we did go see Poltergeist in the theater. The best movie you could see in a theater with kids. There were a lot of I remember a lot of kids being taken to see Poltergeist. Why? Because it was a PG movie. What better movie to take your kids to go see? And yeah, I mean it obviously scarred a lot of kids and left a left an impression, and became an iconic film pretty quickly. I would say certainly did very well at the box office, and became the water cooler movie of that time. Maybe eclipsed by another Steven Spielberg movie coming up, but it was frightening, and fun too. It has a sense of wonder in it that's very Steven Spielberg. Certainly you'll see the characters in the movie and like, oh, these are very pure Steven Spielberg characters. Of course, iconic, movie about the suburbs here with this family in the suburbs, and we've come to know the Freelings very well with the three films and what this movie has become over the years. But obviously I'm a huge fan. I mean, it's stayed with me all this time. I love it. I love the sequels. I'm a big fan of part 3, as you already know, David. And it's inventive, but these movies are pretty inventive. The effects are also a star of the movie, and this is pre CGI effects, so I really enjoy the charm of them, and but all the practical effects too. So it's a lot of good stuff in this one, and I love it to death. And the skeletons are out of my closet. I just love it. I love it. So, how about you?
I am a fan of this movie. I think that a lot of people are bigger fans than I am, but I definitely like this movie. I love certain bits like like the kind of mundane stuff, like the little war with the remote controls that they have.
Yep.
It's just very like Steven Spielberg's touch. It feels like a Steven Spielberg film, but a horror film.
Yeah.
And of course, Toby Hooper is a collaborator on that, but it definitely has a Steven Spielberg feel to it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was his production. He authored the screenplay with help from other people. Yeah, it's his movie. He was making ET at the same time, and so he enlisted Toby Hooper because he wanted someone who could really pull off a horror movie to work on this thing. And between the two of them, they whipped up pretty iconic film that we're still talking about 40 years later. I was actually kind of surprised this one didn't get a push in theaters again. I was kind of hoping, considering how an iconic summer this was, that we'd see a lot of these movies back in theaters. We got E.T., but we didn't get a lot of them. We've got, of course, like say the Draft House, Alamo Draft House playing like some of these movies, but not kind of a more national scale. I was kind of hoping some of these would come back. I thought Poltergeist for sure would come back on a more massive level, but maybe.
Yeah, I did get to see Poltergeist in, I think it was October of 2020, and it was one of the first movies I saw during the pandemic at the theater. But that was not like a big release like you're talking about, like a national release, like say E.T. is getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, it would have been kind of cool. I mean, I've seen it actually at retro screenings, like two retro screenings since the theaters. And seeing it back in the day, I saw it at the Sunshine Cinema in New York City, and another screening. And it's interesting. Those screenings like had different reactions. Like I think one of the screenings I saw, there were a lot of like giggles about like the 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 very the like little details of like the set decoration, and like because it is so much of its time, like say the kid had a lot of Star Wars stuff in his room and sheets and like all that stuff. So that drew a lot of like laughter. I'm like, I kind of get it, but I guess maybe because I was of that generation, I was a kid. I was the kids in this movie. I was their age, so like, I didn't really think too much about that stuff. Like, oh, that's kind of what my childhood was like. I had a lot of ET things and or Star Wars things. So
Yeah, that sort of thing is accurate to me. What's not is like Stranger Things, where the kids have these original posters of the Evil Dead and stuff like that.
yeah,
But the way that memorabilia and merchandise and posters is used in this movie is I can completely relate to that as a kid.
yeah, and it was very true of that time period, and it was certainly when merchandising of movies was really becoming a thing, and Steven Spielberg's movies and productions generally were doing that. Certainly, you could see right there. So yeah, this movie really kind of like hits those notes really well. Like you really kind of they really feel like a family at that time, and there's so many good performances in it. Like, I can go on and on and on about it. So, the next movie, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Khan, and then like the echoing, just like so good. Yeah, so I saw this in the theater, and I'm pretty sure I saw the first one in the theater and fell asleep. But I was 4 for the first one. Second one, I was old enough to enjoy it more, but it also happened to be a more entertaining movie than the first movie at the time, for me at least. And so I remember having fun and just enjoying it, and just I don't know, something about the Star Trek movies of the 80s were really, I wasn't a science fiction, I wasn't a sci-fi kid or fantasy kid, but the Star Trek movies really connected with. I think it's because of the characters. They're so character based, and I really liked the characters and found them endearing and fun in their own ways, and in different ways too. They all kind of, the way they played off of each other, the way like they have antagonizing characters like the Bones and Spock character, and all that fun and the play between each other. And this movie like so good at playing those characters off of each other, and then like have really entertaining set pieces, and Everything about it. A really iconic villain with Ricardo Montalban playing Khan, and just so many things about it that work. And it's not like a super long movie too. I feel like it's the right amount of time. There's like really dull spots in it, which I find a problem with a lot of like science fiction movies. I get a little bored, but I'm never bored with this movie. I'm really entertained, really into it. I love the characters and this and all the action, and yeah, I just find it a total blast. And rewatching it today, I was like, yeah, so good. I think 2, 3, and 4 is really my jam. I really like those movies a lot.
Yeah, I think this movie is really smart because, like you said, the first movie you were for, but it is kind of a slow movie. And I think this is an excellent example of course correcting a franchise. They just really, really improved upon on the first film. I love this movie. It's been quite a while since I've revisited it, and I watched it today. Um, but it's definitely one of the ones that was one of the biggest ones on the list for me when I was a kid. Watching these movies, it was big. I used to watch the Star Trek show, and I like the movies too. And
Mhm.
when I like the one with the whales. I liked 4 the most, but now this is
Mhm.
definitely the best. It's great. It's a great revenge movie. Um, it's got some great themes. It's about getting older and
Mhm.
facing our own mortality, self-sacrifice. We can talk about these themes all day, but one of the things I want to point out that probably not many people are talking about is this movie brought back the look of uh, putting the sweater around, tying the sweater around your shoulders,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're doing it with a nice character, a good character, David Kirk's son. It's not just like the Ted McGinleys of the nerds. And
Right.
I'm glad to see that in 2284 that this is
This is in case you didn't, yeah, just to let you know, it was an 80s movie. We have to have you have to have the character doing that. I love that. I love that touch too. There's a lot of good touches in it. It's good, like, yes, like you said, a smart movie. It's a very smart movie. It's just well done from top to bottom. Effects, music, I mean, everything about it. I love it. I really, it's so good.
in the ear stuff.
Oh my god. So yeah, the ear stuff. I think I mentioned this on the Instagram stories. 1982 was a movie that really messed me up because there were things that happened in movies that really gave me phobias. And I talked about how in Halloween 3 and Creep Show, the 1-2 punch of those movies that came out like a couple weeks within each other, gave me a bug phobia that I still have to this day. So thank you, John Carpenter. Thank you, George Romero. I still have a bug phobia because of those 2 movies. Star Trek 2 gave me gave me a thing where if people go near my ear or like try to touch my ear in any way, like I get like really freaked out. And I think, and I could trace that back to the seeing the screening of this movie for the first time, and like just like that scene just really getting inside my head and thinking about it like the whole night. So even though it's not a typical movie you would call a kinder trauma, thanks to the guys at Kinder Trauma for coining that. Um, like Poltergeist, for example, is a movie of the summer that I would say was the big Kinder Trauma movie for a lot of people, a lot of kids of that generation, especially. This was my Kinder of the summer. Thank you, Star Trek
Yeah,
2 and those creepy ear things. Ugh.
I agree. The ear stuff is more disturbing to me than the stuff in Poltergeist.
I just love that this movie has that element too. That's how good it is. All right, so we didn't have enough iconic movies already, so we're gonna get to I guess the you would say when you talk about the summer of '82, the biggest movie of the summer, the biggest movie of the year of 1982, and that of course is E.T. for those without the video. So E.T. was the movie I was most looking forward to see. Of course, this was a movie made, for me, but also other people, as it turned out. I'm like, okay, this is they're targeting exactly what I wanted as a 7-year old. and given it to me in the most glorious package, the most beautiful package, sensitive, with beautiful music and cinematography, and very simple but straightforward screenplay, and that's not too labored with stuff it doesn't need. It's got a sense of wonder like no other movie. It's got great effects for me, at least at the time. I just thought I really bought and believed this character. I mean, I didn't believe it was alive because I knew the difference, but I believed in ET. Like I felt like ET was like a real character, someone they were, of course, interacting with. Like felt like that character was really brought to life in the best possible way, and um, I was just like in love. So I went back to go see it like I don't know 4 or 5 times that summer. I mean, actually, not even over the summer. It was like 4 or 5 times that year because it played like for ever. It played almost a year in theaters. People forget that movies played like for a long time, like sometimes almost a year. This was one of those movies. It had a re-release, of course, later on in '85, but it yeah, it played for 82 into 80, well into '83. So I went to see 4 or 5 times, capture that magic over and over. I got ET things. You'll see some couple of things left over time. Um, some Kraft mac and cheese thing. Um, and I had an ET puzzle that I remember like being really upset that I glued together because I just kind of I don't know why I did that. I did the puzzle and I glued it together and it looked terrible and I was like really bummed out about that because I saved my money to buy the puzzle myself. There was so much ET stuff, of course. Sure again. But yeah, became such a iconic thing in our culture that was made with love and like a sweetness about it. And very few things are like that these days. I feel like a commercial movie, a very commercial movie like ET is just feels now like a product, like a Marvel or whatever these days. And you don't find like the gentleness and the sweetness in a movie anymore, like that. Here these days, I feel like it just would feel more like a commodity than anything else, or an IP or something. Here it was, just, something that Steven really wanted to make, a movie that he really wanted to tap into, tap into something that wasn't really, that I guess he was kind of elaborating on with Close Encounters, but I don't know, tapping into the kid within himself and just showing it to everyone, and everyone's kind of like feeling like a kid again, regardless of their age. And I certainly watch this movie a lot and feel like a kid all over again. And I cry every time I see it, honestly, by the end of the movie because it touches me that much. And yeah, I love it. I mean, I sometimes would even dare say it's my favorite movie of all time because it means so much to me, and a movie's so commercial, so big, so touched by so many people. Like I could share that with I guess a lot of people, but I think it means something different for everyone. So which is great. How about for you?
Well, this was definitely the year of ET, and it's a very deserving film of that for that. It was just basically the conversation. It is the movie to watch that year, and I watched it over and over again. And yeah, I loved it. It's an amazing movie. I still love seeing it. I've seen it several times in the past few years at different re-releases, fan events, and now this IMAX release that just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's it has not lost any of its power. In fact, I love just looking at it, looking at the way the shots are composed, how the adults are filmed, how the kids are filmed, and then that just John Williams score. It's just amazing every time.
Yeah, I mean the scores. How I've talked about this podcast, how scores are so integral to films, and I mean, without the score, I mean, it would still be a strong film, but it wouldn't be quite the same movie. And because of the collaboration between those two, and like it really crystallizes so much in this movie. And it's so yeah, the score and the movie and the images that they compose together are so beautiful. And And of course, like I keep saying iconic because that's what they ended up becoming, but you can see why they had such a strong real emotional reaction to people so quickly. Yeah, so beautifully done. Like a tender movie about an alien coming to Earth, and um, yeah, this doesn't happen anymore. So I mean, they made ripoffs, but those are different things. Okay, E.T., we love you. Grease 2, another movie that I loved that came out the same week. Not as beloved as E.T. I'm gonna just throw that out there. Grease 2 is not as beloved. Um, but I love it. Um, I've always been a fan of Grease 2. I've always been a fan of movies where a character is masquerading as someone else, and this is certainly that movie. And it taps into all the things I like about teen movies, and then wrapping it into a musical and a sequel and a big budgeted movie, and just having a lot of dance sequences and fun music. The things I love about it are probably the things that people hate about it. So it's kind of a weird movie to talk about for me because, whatever opinions people have about it don't mean anything to me because this movie means a lot to me, and for many reasons. And I immediately bonded with it in 1982, seeing it in the theater, and then more so on home video. Because I only saw that one time in the theater, and just watching it a lot and getting the soundtrack and listening to the soundtrack a lot. So Grease 2 is what Grease 1 is to a lot of people for me. And yeah, I still listen to it. I have a program there, Grease 2, hanging, original program that's it's very hard to find because I love it. I have a poster. Play the soundtrack a lot. My kids are really into Grease too. They're also really into ET, of course. But a lot of kids are. They love Grease too. So I don't know if that's something that they inherited from me because I don't. The average kids are not watching Grease 2 as much, but I just like that they like that, like that kind of thing about it. It's a long movie. It's almost 2 hours. So I guess for some it might be boring, but I don't know because there's so much music and dancing in it, especially dancing. It's a very dancing movie because it was directed by a choreographer, of course. Yeah, I don't know. To me, many scenes that just live with me and will always live with me, and music that lives with me. Um, but again, a movie that has a lot of has a very different meaning for other people. It wasn't a success, obviously. It killed the Grease franchise. So what? I dare to ask, did you see Grease 2? At what point in your life did you see Grease 2?
That was a big cable movie. I saw that a lot
Oh yeah, it
growing.
played a lot on HBO
Yeah,
or whatever the streaming service or service was.
and I had seen Grease, but I definitely saw Grease 2 more growing up. And I still remember a lot of it. It's been quite a while since I've revisited it, and it's definitely one that I want to revisit. And soon I will. But I remember kind of the naughty humor of it, and
Hmm.
for the opening sequence. I love that opening song, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just a lot of fun for me. And I do remember it being it. I do remember its reputation. It was kind of like, this is a bomb, this is a stink bomb, this is not good. But I had a great time with it.
I'm glad you did. It is, yeah, it divides people. I know Grease 2 fans who are some really huge Grease 2 fans, and I know people who hate it. So it's whatever, it is what it is. But for whoever you are, um, but this is a very pro Grease 2 house. So
And
he,
Pfeiffer, I just have to add,
yeah,
that's some star power. You could just tell right then.
you could
She's gonna
see why she would go on to being in Scarface and like having such a big career from this movie. Um, and she was a strong character, which was nice to see in a Grease movie. Humongous came out the same week. I did not see Humongous in theaters, unfortunately, but I did see it on video, which it was a terrible video too, like a very dark copy the embassy, Avco embassy home video release was dark, hard to see, but I remember enjoying it anyway because I do like a Canadian slasher. Here we got another one, and the idea of these young people on an island with a mongoloid type of character killing them off one by one is fun to me, and this movie really capitalizes on that in its very low key way and low budgeted way and Canadian way. That's, maybe not going to ever shout, hey, look at me, I'm the movie to watch. As a video store rental at the time, I thought it was entertaining and fun, and I totally was endeared to it pretty quickly, and held that over the years for some reason. Even though for people it was one of those movies that, oh, the transfer's too bad, you can't see anything, what's going on in it? What is this pointless movie? I enjoy it. I still enjoy it. I watch it. I just was watching it just a few minutes ago, and I'm like, yeah, I still enjoy this Scooby Doo slasher on an island where no one's face is pulled off, but to reveal anything. But you do get some questionable creature effects or monster effects in the last reel of the movie. So that's the equivalent.
Yeah, a very good look at the killer's face. And
Yeah.
I had never seen this movie until this week,
Mm-hmm.
but I was pretty familiar, and I owned the Blu-ray for several years, and I just never popped it in. And I was pretty familiar with the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
The trailer, the way that they intercut with just humongous being spelled out in really fast fashion. It's like the letters are making an impact and making a sound when they land. And so from that trailer, I don't remember knowing who the killer was or what the killer was. And so I started this up and I was like, okay, the opening was pretty interesting. I'm like, what is this killer going to be? Is this going to be a monster? Is this going to be a person? All I know is that it's going to be humongous. And then when we do finally see the killer, I'm thinking, well, not so much humongous, but pretty big. And that's not maybe as good a title as humongous. But with this movie, I liked some of the shots, a couple cool split diopter shots too. Yeah, it was fun. Definitely a deep cut slap.
Yeah, you call it that. I guess maybe not every video store had this one. So it was a little bit lost to some people over time, but it has some interesting character stuff in it. It has some really jerky characters. There's some like endearing characters. There's not many people in the movie. It's a very small cast too, but something about it, like this low key charm, I just really enjoy. And that's true of like a few movies from this era. Like there are some of the little small ones that kind of slip under the radar that I'd kind of gravitate towards. And this is one of them. It's directed by Paul Lynch, who did Prom Night, which I'm a big fan of. So okay, June 11th, Not a Love Story, Pornography was also released. Going to June 18th, Author, the Al Pacino plus kids movie that time hasn't been as kind to. I remember always seeing the video box at the video store, but I always wondered if this was a movie that Al Pacino fans would pick up. Like, I'm gonna rent Scarface, Dog Day Afternoon, Godfather, and oh yeah, author. Like how that went down. I remember being a sweet movie when I saw it, and just kind of a leftover 70s movie, feeling in a way in the early 80s. It felt like kind of like to me like a 70s movie about a scrappy dad and like scrappy kids and kind of like antagonizing each other and like can learn to love each other kind of movie. Of course, him playing a writer. Yeah, I don't know. I like this one. It's a sweet movie. It's got a very big cast of kids, and I know that could be for some a detraction, but I don't know. I like them. I like that they all have their own characters. There's another movie like this movie in the summer coming up. Another dad and like several kids movie. But I like both of them for some reason. Maybe because I had a dad who was not a good dad and kind of took off around this time period in my life. So I like seeing these kinds of movies where the dad has to like you know, learn to be a good dad kind of movies. It's a sweet movie, and I think I
Yeah,
have the DVD somewhere. Do you like it?
yeah, I do like it. It's definitely a movie that, when you're watching stuff on cable, that it's a big part of it is kids, and so just like
Mm-hmm.
seeing interact with Al Pacino was a big part of the appeal for me back then. I mean, what 10-year-olds are watching author on a daily basis, but I certainly saw it a few times.
Yeah.
And one of the things that sort of endures about this movie is one of the fashion choices is when he comes in, he's got the breakfast tray, and he's wearing this long. Al Pacino's wearing this long red nightshirt, and and it's just really funny. I like to make references to that scene with one of my friends a lot, and a couple years ago, I actually gave him that. Well, you can't find the same thing, but I gave him a red nightshirt and a tray for just like from the movie Author.
I love that. All right. Bolero from Claude Lelouch came out. A movie called Fabian, and then the other, I guess, the big movie of that week was Firefox, the Clint Eastwood movie. Clint Eastwood starring, directing, Cold War, stealing this. I guess what is it like a jet
It's a
type?
control with your mind. Is that I got from?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like I know I saw this movie as a kid and I was totally bored by it. So it's one of those movies like, oh, I gotta rewatch it. I rewatched it and I'm like, yeah, I can see why I was bored by it because there's so much of this movie where it's like old white guys talking. That's what I gotta call it, old white guys talking, and then like some peppered by some like Top Gun ish sky jet sequences. It's a yeah, it is very much I guess what was happening in movies at the time. He was I guess introducing slowly to his vocabulary some kind of technology into Clint Eastwood's movies. And there were a few of these kinds of movies, like Blue Thunder was another one. Airwolf on TV. Yeah, I don't know. I rewatching it, I'm like, I still feel kind of the same way about it. It's kind of a boring movie, and I just wish it was like maybe like a 90-minute movie when cutting out a lot of the old white guys talking would have been fun. Yeah, it wants to be an old school espionage movie, and I don't know if it could be both, like a high technology and old school espionage movie. It didn't quite pull it off for me. Certainly better Eastwood movies. Have you seen that one?
No, I didn't see this one. I was more of a Bronco Billy kid,
Yeah.
which times, but I never got to see Firefox, and some of my friends really love this movie, and you know, also acknowledge that it's slow in parts. But I think I would like to see it. But um, I saw some clips. I saw the Siskel and Ebert review of it, and it looks okay. But I'm going to keep my expectations grounded for this uh, for this plane movie.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the best way to go. Okay, June 25th. Speaking of Disney re-releases, Bambi was re-released that week. That was the option for kids. Adults had Blade Runner, another iconic movie from the summer, science fiction film. I know I saw it, but I didn't like it as a kid. Something about it was not my thing. I was kind of like disconnected from it for some reason. I know others had a very different reaction, loved it immediately. I just wasn't the kid who was into Blade Runner. I'm still the adult who's not that quite into Blade Runner, but now I appreciate it more than I did back then. So I could appreciate the work that was put into this movie, which is a lot, and the vision, of course, that Tony Scott, oh God, Ridley Scott had. Sorry, Ridley. Um, and the actors, there are a lot of great actors in this movie, and the look of it, of course, and the feel of it, the music. um yeah, I mean, it's become quite a movie. It has several cuts. I watched the final cut version. I don't know if that's the cut to see, but that's what I watched. um still a little disconnected from it, but that's just me. I i uh just don't pay attention to me. You can still love obviously you can still love Blade Runner and get whatever you want out of Blade Runner. um Maybe I want more Rutger Hauer. I do like a lot of the people in it, which is cool.
Yeah, I was putting together my list of top 10, and this is on it. But it's the only one where it's a film that I admire more than I love. I think it definitely has its place on the list, but it's just visually sumptuous.
Mm-hmm.
I think that of all the movies on this list of Summer of '82, this one probably has the strongest life. If you were to show repertory screenings of it, it would do the best, because people still love this movie. I'm a little distanced from it, but I do really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, if you got two other guys talk about Blade Runner, you'd have a probably different conversation. They'd probably go on about Blade Runner for like 6 hours, but unfortunately, we don't have that time, and we're not those guys. We do like Blade Runner though. Megaforce. I did not see that as a kid because I don't know. That felt like at the time I got the impression it was like a cheap, run of the mill kind of science fiction fantasy movie. Um, with a weird kind of sense of humor, I guess. So actually, to this day, I haven't seen Megaforce.
Hmm.
This is one that time has kind of like slipped by for me. Have you seen it?
I have seen it a couple of times, and it's a lot of fun. The story is not much of a story. It looks cheap, but it wasn't cheap. It was actually a pretty expensive movie. I think the budget was like $20 million, which
Oh
is
wow, so it's actually
amazing
big, yeah.
for this. And I certainly had a lot of fun with it. I kind of right now thinking about it, I think about like the way it was marketed to kids. It was on the back of comic books, and I remember the tagline was "Are you man enough for Megaforce?" And just the pictures of Barry Bostwick, and you could send away for like a fan club, I think, and getting the patches and all the other memorabilia. Like I kind of want to get that now, but I think it's a lot of fun, but don't go expecting much of a story with it. But it's sort of a hoot.
I think someone released like a mega edition of it recently, so it might have some of that paraphernalia in it.
Yeah, new
Point
there's a new Blu-ray of it.
Yeah, because it was a 20th Century Fox film, so it was clearly them trying to capitalize on Star Wars again, so ripping themselves off. But I think there might be a foreign Blu-ray of it, which is yeah.
Yeah, it's produced by Golden Harvest.
Oh, Golden Harvest. That's pretty funny.
I think it's an Australian Blu-ray that just came out, but it's region free. So
Probably Umbrella then. So
yeah, I think it's Umbrella.
yeah, they do good work. Yeah, I need to catch up with that, I guess. It wasn't in 3D, otherwise I definitely would have seen it. Monty Python Live at the Holy Hollywood Ball came out. And then a very little movie called The Thing, or more appropriately called John Carpenter's The Thing. So I did see it in the theater and was totally disgusted by it and shocked by it, like everyone else was at the time. Um, I'm trying to remember what the vibe was when it came out. I think it was a movie that people were anticipating, but then I guess kind of it definitely got buried because of the popularity of other movies. Certainly E.T., but then you're forgetting that Blade Runner and Star Trek 2, all these other movies came out, these big sci-fi movies. So it kind of got buried because of that. And I think critics weren't kind, right? I remember that to it. I didn't get it. I think there was a kind of maybe the general vibe was that they didn't quite get it, and it was just kind of a disgusting, gross movie. Why was John Carpenter doing such a gross movie when he was doing like really classy kind of movies, like with The Fog and of course Halloween, movies that didn't show much, left things up to the imagination. Here he was like showing everything, and certainly ushering in a new era in the 80s of effects, practical effects, and creature effects. And it was like, I mean, at the time, I guess I was one of those people who kind of took it for granted a little bit, but it still stuck with me. And like this shit that happens in the movie, like what is you never had seen before in a movie, and like what is happening? Like it's kind of blowing your mind and scaring the hell out of you at the same time. And then on home video, I'd watch it and like, wow, this movie, like I really kind of like, yeah, need to just watch this a lot. And I did over the years. I watched it a lot, and much like a lot of other John Carpenter movies, certainly at the time, like I would just watch them all the time and just really be entertained by them and grossed out by them. I was certainly this one, and yeah. And then eventually it became like upper tier John Carpenter for me, and like this is like one of his best movies, and why isn't why isn't mentioned along with Halloween? Um, and then eventually it did become that movie, and talked about that way and loved, and just took time, took some like home video viewings and cable viewings or whatever it was, to survive into people's memories, because once you see it you don't forget it. There are images of this movie will burn in your head forever, and but not in a way that's like just merely to shock. It's just to really just entertain you, and just a lot of work put into it, certainly by Carpenter, but also by the effects people, Rob Bottin, and other people who worked on it, and just master level shit. It's so good. I mean, the music, of course, iconic music, and all the ingredients that come together to make a great film come together in this movie really well. And you can't deny John Carpenter's The Thing anymore. 1982. It's become, truly one of the most memorable movies of that era and that year, and still, and I love it. I think I have a 4K of it somewhere.
I saw a post just yesterday from one of the Draft House theaters that they've made screening The Thing a monthly event. They said everyone keeps buying tickets for it, so we're just going to keep playing it. So playing every month. So that's another a huge repertory title.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie, it's not one that I caught on cable as a kid. It was probably high school when I first got to see this one, and uh, I kind of immediately liked it, but just more and more. And in college, it was definitely a cult film by this point. But I still don't think it had gotten the reputation that it has now. And I think that it's gotten just it's up there. I think many people love it. I have some friends who don't like horror movies, but they like The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because this movie was just so panned. A lot of it was because of the violence that was in it. And it was shocking at the time. It still is, but it's got that amazing creature effects work, which is pretty much unparalleled. I can't think of another movie. This movie spent probably 10% of its budget on creature effects with Rob Bottin. It was all done to an incredible effect. Yeah, it's an amazing movie. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a masterful movie, and it's affected a lot of people. Like John Carpenter's done this quite a few times over his career, where he made a movie that was kind of ahead of its time. And Halloween was a slow burn hit. John Carpenter's The Thing became a hit eventually, and then like Yeah, quite a few of those movies, if you think about them, like they weren't hits like out of the gate. Like The Thing, They Live, and even Prince of Darkness was not like mentioned all that much back in the day. Or even let's go with Big Trouble in Little China, right? So many of those movies became such bigger hits, cult movies. Like you were saying, like college movies, home video releases and parties and people just watching them. Like, but once people saw images in this movie, specifically The Thing, they didn't forget them. Certainly my wife had that experience. Like she saw this in a drive-in and she never forgot it. It became, a movie that she absolutely loves. It's one of her all-time favorite movies and her favorite John Carpenter movie by far. Um, and I can see why, because become it's become quite the thing. July 2nd, The Secret of Nymph, which I did see. Um, and another one of those experiences where I was kind of bored. I was bored by the kid movies at the time, which is weird. I don't know, maybe something about it, animation at the time. It was like a kind of the Don Bluth animation thing. I didn't connect to those that much for some reason. This has kind of become a big movie for a lot of people in their youth. But I wasn't the person for that. Were you the person who liked The Secret of Nymph?
No, I saw it once.
I didn't even
Um,
say nymph. Sorry, guys. Nim.
yeah, one time, and I watched it again recently, um, and I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't underwhelmed. I was whelmed, and I kind of feel the same way. Except this time, I really, really enjoyed Dom DeLuise. I think he's just having a ball. His voice work in this movie is terrific, and he's got a really good summer. This plus
Oh yeah.
Best Little Horse.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the movie, but like looking at it now, I'm glad that it's not like a movie where it's just full of gags and references and things like that. It gives itself time to breathe, um, and be its own thing. It's not just like you were saying a piece of product or content. It's
Mhm.
its own thing, but is it successful? I mean, I like it, but I'm not a huge fan of it.
Yeah. I was saying how I was kind of bored. I was a kid by it, but like watching, like, because I have kids, I'm watching kids movies these days. Like, God, they're so boring because there's so much jammed into them. Like they're like always like frenetic and like it's like got like loud and obnoxious. And I'm just like, I get so bored by watching those movies too. So I'm never gonna win with kids movies. Tron came out July 9th. That was the release, the one release of that week. I was on board for Tron. I mean, it's maybe I wasn't exactly the audience for Tron. I was 7. I was playing arcade games, but not that often. I didn't have no, I certainly didn't have Nintendo. I had Atari. I didn't have yet. I played Atari and Coleco at my aunt's house. I wasn't quite a video game kid yet. So I wasn't quite ready for a video game movie, but then I kind of something about the effects and the trailer, like, oh yeah, I got to see Tron, and I enjoyed it. I remember having fun with Tron as a kid, and then eventually kind of appreciating it more over time. It's like one of those movies. I think that's certainly the case for Tron. Like, it really found an audience more so later on, and became much bigger thing than it was initially. Um, but yeah, I do enjoy Tron, and it's one of those movies I introduced to my kids and found. I was like, oh, I was for sure thinking they were going to be not into Tron, but they somehow liked it too. They enjoyed it, so it kind of holds up 40 years later. Which is, and it's one of these kind of technology driven movies where like it could easily be like feel outdated for younger generations, but I don't know, something about the effects are really good, like, and well done. So I like Tron. I'm a fan of Tron.
Yeah, I missed this when it came out. I was aware that this was a groundbreaking movie and people were talking about the movie quite a bit, but I didn't see it until, I don't know, within the last 10 years. And I've really seen it only, I think, one time all the way through. And I enjoyed it, but I haven't, maybe I missed that part of my life. I saw it a little later to
Hmm.
where becomes a rewatchable movie for me. Um, I liked it, but it's not something that I've really ever felt the need to go back to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe that kind of movie, a slow burn for people. It takes a while, multiple viewings. I think that was like for me too. I appreciate it more now. So I'm glad I'm into Tron these days. We're due for a rewatch, so um on July 16th, A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy, the Woody Allen comedy, which I kind of like so on. Re-release of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Again, re-releases were big in this time period. Raiders of the Lost Ark had a few of them. This was the first major um, re-release of it. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I saw it when it first came out, so I enjoyed it. And I really liked Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't need to go back into that one. Six Pack is also July 16th. This is the other dad, sort of dad, takes these kids under his wing movie. Kenny Rogers. I was gonna say Kenny Loggins. Sorry. Kenny Rogers is this race car driver, and like sweet kids, or they're like, when I say sweet kids, they're not, these kids are not sweet, they're like sassy, whatever. But it's fun to watch those dynamics, and these characters kind of have to melt and like become, like, because they're kind of jerks, and then they have to melt and become good parental figures. And I like Six Pack. And it has a good Kenny Rogers song in it. Maybe I'll include it in this audio version. Let's see. Do you like Six Pack? Have you seen Six Pack?
Yeah, I've seen it once. I saw it when I was a kid, and I did enjoy it. I've never gone back to it, but it's one that I would revisit. Still listen to the song though, so I do hope you play it.
Yeah, it's like you too. I haven't revisited a lot over the years. I rewatched it like a couple years ago for family movie night, and again, another movie. I'm like, kids are not going to be into this movie. They actually enjoyed it, so maybe it's because like the kids being kind of naughty kind of thing. It's kind of holds up for kids like somehow. Kids like to see other kids being naughty, or like, or just like smoking, or just like, or having foul language, foul language, whatever. It's like, it's fun for kids. I get that. Young Doctors in Love. I don't have a lot of notes about this one, other than I didn't write any notes actually today, but um, I knew an older gentleman at Kim's Video. He was like the first person to get a membership at the video store. So he's like, the memberships were like B and then numbers, like series of numbers, and there was like, they were up to like, I don't know, when I worked there, like several tens of thousands, whatever it was. He was like B1. So I just remember him. He loved Young Doctors in Love. It was like his like second favorite movie of all time, I think, after Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. So he like kind of like wacky comedies, and that's what I remember about that movie. And Sean Young is in it, so fresh from Blade Runner. Another wacky comedy came out on July 23rd, and that's of course the now iconic Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So back in this time period, the 70s and early 80s, you get a lot of Burt Reynolds movies. And I'm not sure how that has held up for people over the last, few years. Like, because we haven't had obviously I haven't had Burt Reynolds movies in a while since he passed away, but also before that he wasn't churning them out, right? Like he was back in the 70s and 80s, early to mid 80s. This is one of the best ones. Certainly to me, a really fun raucous romp with Burt Reynolds and the magical pairing of Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton. I guess, I don't know. There's of course the music and the dancing and all that aspect of it that I love, and the comedy is fun. The actors are great, down to the supporting cast. You mentioned Dom DeLuise. He plays a very kind of fun villainous character in this one. I don't know, something about the love story is really sweet in this movie. Again, movies taking the time to be sweet in the middle of all this silliness and craziness, I think is kind of missing in a lot of other movies. So this one has that, and I just love them together in it. I almost like, why didn't they make more movies together? This is a kind of a hit too, and of course, it's become a big thing. It's become an iconic musical. It's had, you know, they've had Broadway shows based on it, of course, and so it's become a big thing, and it was a kind of a very big deal in the time period too. So I'm surprised they didn't do another Burt and Dolly movie, because they were really great together. I like this one a lot. It brings us, it's one of those movies that like I watched if you want to like give you a nice smile. It brings a nice smile to your face kind of movie. And it's silly, but I love that about it too.
Yeah, this is actually this might surprise you, but today is the first time I've ever seen this movie.
Nice.
I clips from it. I remembered a couple lines from some of the songs, but I'd never seen the whole movie until today, and it is a lot of fun. Burt is just charming from just the first second he's on screen. Um, they are terrific together, Burt and Dolly. And I also want to mention Charles Durning. He's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of shocking to me that they filmed this movie in the Capitol at Austin. It's just amazing that they got to do that. That they got to stage this sequence there. If it's not the Capitol, it's an incredible replica. It has to be. It just has to be. But yeah, it's this. I don't usually watch movies. I don't usually have movies on in the background. I usually like to just sit and watch them. But I think this is one that would be fun to just have on.
I mean, it was directed by Colin Higgins. So we're gonna look up his credits. He doesn't have a lot of them, but so Colin Higgins directed three movies. First one was Foul Play, then 9 to 5, and then The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Three perfect comedies. I mean, I love all three of those movies, and three iconic movies in their own way. He wrote other things. He wrote Silver Streak, which was also another big movie at the time. It was a huge movie, and it came out in the 70s. And then, of course, Harold and Maude, that little movie. He wrote that. So this one guy responsible for one, two, three, four, five, like amazing movies, which is, pretty cool, really cool. He passed away way too young, so we didn't get to have more Colin Higgins movies. He died in 1988 at 47. Just a shame. Love it. Best Little House in Texas. The Challenge was a movie that time eluded me. Like I was good, one of those movies like, oh, I'm gonna see The Challenge finally, and because I'm into John Frankenheimer, I'm into martial arts movies. This one's about swords play in Japan, and where that takes people. It's the real love for a sword. There's a line in this movie where the guy's like, yeah, he's really queer for swords or something. Like it's a really funny line, like the way it's delivered by this Asian character, like to Scott Glenn. Yeah, he's really queer for swords. I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah, but then you watch the movie, like, oh yeah, they really are like obsessed with swords in this movie. It's a really swordy movie. So these two like rivals who are like trying to get this sword, and Scott Glenn's kind of put in the middle of it to get it back from each other, right? Each side. Um, I had fun watching this movie. I'm like, I should have watched this movie a while ago. It's pretty fun. It's not like top tier John Frankenheimer, but it's like entertaining for what it is, and yeah, there's a good battle, especially towards the end of the movie. That's like really feel like when people get caught up in this movie, you kind of feel it, which is great. And John Frankenheimer's good at chase sequences. There's a good foot chases and stuff in this one. So it's entertaining. It's like got that brand of Frankenheimer action and editing. Like there's a interesting editing in the movie too. That's good. And I have more to say, but I'm curious. Have you seen The Challenge?
I haven't seen The Challenge. That's one that I see the box for, or I see the cover art a lot, and I just on paper I should want to watch it because Scott Glenn, martial arts, John Frankenheimer. It just never I got around to it.
Yeah, Toshiro Mifune is like has a major role in it, and he's like, of course, iconic. Keep saying that word today. He's this great Japanese actor and Akira Kurosawa films, and he has a great role in it too. Gets to teach Scott Glenn the ways. And okay, one thing I have to say about this movie. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie, and plan on picking up the Blu-ray finally. I need to do that from Kino Lorber. Scott Glenn didn't become a movie star after Urban Cowboy, which was, a pretty breakout role for him. Like he was like pretty beloved character in that movie. And he made this movie. And I know why he didn't become like a leading actor. This was like his first leading role. His hair. He has a crazy bowl cut in this movie that's so distracting. Like the whole movie, I'm like, is he ever gonna get a haircut? Is someone gonna like use those swords, those really sharp swords, and like cut his hair and give him a proper haircut? Because it's like Danny Torrance, like that kind of moppy kind of hair. Like it looks really weird on like an actor like Scott Glenn, who's like a very mature face. And so like, why has he got this kid haircut? He's not gonna get leading man roles with like a kid haircut. So weird. Moving on, The World According to Garp, which I didn't see in theaters. Caught up with that eventually on home video, and I liked that one a lot actually over the time. I think it was one of those movies I had to be a little bit more mature to appreciate. I liked it as a kid, but whenever it was that I first saw it, but I liked it more as I got older. So I certainly like it much more than say like a movie it's often compared with Forrest Gump about like a guy's following a guy's life and yeah, it's like kind of similar. Not he's not a Forrest Gump character, but he's not too dissimilar at the same time. So it was nice seeing Robin Williams in a kind of a serious role, but it has funny moments in it. It has very some outlandish moments in it. Give it its source material, and yeah, I like this one a lot. Kind of curious your take on it.
Well, this is one that I saw a lot on cable as a kid, and I'm just kind of looking back at it the last couple of days. I was just like, wow. I remembered a lot of it because I haven't revisited it since then probably, and I remembered a lot of the plot points, but it just kind of went over my head. And some of the big plot points that you look at now, and you're like, wow, this is a very heavy detail that I didn't remember at all. It's a good movie. I like it. I like Robin Williams in it a lot. Great cast. It's I think one of the things about it is John Lithgow. John Lithgow is great in the movie. Has a very good character. You're following this writer through his life from as a baby. Well, and then it kind of goes to high school, and then up until just I don't know, maybe his 40s. And it's got a lot of quirky things along the way, but it's also very dark. But it doesn't get like overwhelmed by it. But there's a lot of heavy stuff going on, and I want to read the book now.
Yeah, I mean, John Irving was, that was his brand of having this balance of light and dark things that happen, like that dark things that could happen at any moment, but in kind of very pitch black kind of comic ways. He was very good at that. Hotel New Hampshire is a movie and book that I'm thinking of too. It does that. Zapped was the other movie that week. Zapped, Whirling Curling Garb, Zapped. You had your choice. Um, I certainly saw Zapped in the theater because that was a movie made for a little kid. It was literally was a movie made for a little kid. They would when this started Zapped off, it was a PG movie. They meant for it to be kind of a almost harmless kind of PG movie, but then I guess they had a change of heart, and they made it into a very raunchy movie because that was what was happening in '82. Of course, you see the release of Porky's in that era. So Zapped became a nice kid-friendly movie to a very naughty movie, and so I saw Zapped and loved Zapped immediately. I have a poster of Zapped hanging on my wall somewhere now. It's pretty silly, stupid, stoner type comedy, but yeah, I just talked about it on a podcast, so reserve my thoughts for it for an upcoming podcast that might be out of it. It's going to be out in September. What are your thoughts on Zapped?
Zapped is a lot of fun. I think of all the movies on this list, this one screams summer to me the most because the characters go to an amusement park, and these are all things that you want to do as a kid. The idea of having telekinesis and making things move with your mind is also, I can definitely see how this initially was. I didn't know this until you just said that this was initially kind of a PG movie, and they just raunched it up quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. I like Scatman Crothers. I like the supporting cast. It's one that I've revisited a few times. It's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I've seen it, but it's like you watch it and then that's Eddie Deason. You've got all these things as a frequent movie watcher, a comedy watcher that you see, and like it's just great to see these people in it. It's kind of a comfort movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pure silliness. All right, July 28th, An Officer and a Gentleman came out. Classier movie than Zapped. So you had some like silly movies and classy movies coming out at the same time. Officer and a Gentleman, it was definitely a breakout hit of that summer. I remember it played months and months, this movie. People forget that it was such a I'm a quiet hit because he just kept playing and playing, and then it got nominated for some Academy Awards. Louis Gossett Jr. won. The song was so memorable. Love lifts us up where it belongs. Played everywhere. Um, I like that movie a lot. Actually, it's very good studio filmmaking by Taylor Hackford, and Richard Gere is good in it, and Deborah Winger. I like her a lot. Yeah, it's a solid studio movie that we used to get a lot of back then, but not anymore.
Yeah, I love this movie. I've only seen it maybe 3 times, and then whatever I saw of it growing up on TV, and some of the things I remember very well. There's one plot point which is quite dramatic that
Mm-hmm.
really stuck with me. And just it works. It really works. Like the way that the song comes up at the end. It you might some of these things like it might have been like not the most realistic or grittiest ending, but boy, it sure works. This is just audience filmmaking, and this was one of the biggest movies of the year. It's not one that people talk about as much, but I would like to revisit it. It's been a couple of years since I've seen it, but I love Lou Gossett Jr. in this movie. The cast is amazing. The rest of the cast, it's one to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure Paramount will do like a 4K because they're doing all those now. They just announced Saturday Night Fever 4K for the 45th anniversary. I'll definitely be picking up that. So I'd get a 4K off some gentlemen. Why not? July 30th, Forced Vengeance, Chuck Norris. There were 2 Chuck Norris movies that year. I talked about this movie a lot. I talked about all the Chuck Norris movies on a Chuck Norris movie podcast. That was like a 4-hour Chuck Norris podcast. So Everything you want to know about Chuck Norris, you can listen to on the Chuck Norris podcast from this. That was on the Patreon, so you have to get Patreon, guys. Force Vengeance. Have you seen this one?
No, but the trailer is quite a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. At the time, I think I'm trying to remember my review. It was like not one of his best movies. Kind of like more in the middle of the pack, but it's enjoyable nevertheless. So, The Last American Virgin came out that week. Certainly a movie everyone knows I love. So, do you love it?
I do. Uh, I it's got that amazing ending. It's got a great cast, great soundtrack. Um, Golden Globus movie. It's actually a remake of I can't remember the name of the film that it's a remake of.
Lemon Popsicle.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. It's laugh out loud funny in some spots, but it's pretty naughty. So this one was one that I think was like one of like kind of forbidden fruit for me. But yeah, it takes some turns too that you're not expecting, and it hits pretty hard. I like this movie a lot.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as a kid, just seeing this, like, yeah, I was like, whoa, this is like the movie for me. Um, and then the ending, whoa, I don't know what they're trying to do to me now. And in between all that fun and silliness and great music, such a great score. I mean, great soundtrack. This is all songs and a lot of good songs too. Fun, pure fun. Night Shift, another big comedy came out that week, and I saw this and immediately I really just could say I loved it off the bat. I liked the characters a lot. You had the Fonz, you had Michael Keaton, who was not quite yet Mr. Mom, so just kind of breaking out with this movie. Um, and they were fun together. The way they played off each other was so fun. And then you throw in Shelley Long to the mix as a prostitute with a heart of gold, which is very much an 80s concept. I don't know, just the three of them in New York City together, and the hijinks and the hearts. Great song in this one too. Yeah, I really love this movie. It's really sweet and fun and silly. It's got everything you want in an 80s movie. Great actors on top of it, and the New York movie was some grit too, and directed by Ron Howard. He's not a person I immediately think with any kind of grit. Unfortunately, for a long time I said this is my favorite Ron Howard film. His first studio film, Night Shift, is still probably my favorite Ron Howard film. I mean, he's made some good movies, obviously, over the years, but I don't know. I go back to Night Shift the most, maybe Cocoon after that. So thank you, Ron Howard, for making this movie, and I love it to death.
I love this movie. I've loved it since the first time I've seen it. It is the most rewatched movie like in the last few years for me of anything on this list. I go to it pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched this movie as a kid. Even as a kid, you look at this movie. I've never seen Michael Keaton before, and I just know this guy's got that certain something. Kind of like with Michelle Pfeiffer, this guy's going to be a big star.
Yeah.
Scene where he's talking about his mom is so good, but alongside all the silliness too, and just looking at it now, it's amazing because Henry Winkler plays so against type in this movie, and I just kind of wonder what that reaction was like, because you're not getting what you're expecting from the Fonz, but I think it was a really good choice from him, and I think his performance is underrated in this movie. He's really good in this movie, and this one has some of the best music. You mentioned the song. There's several really great songs in this movie. I just love it. I love to quote it. It's very high on my list.
Yeah, same here. I get a lot of replay value. I rented the VHS a lot. I remember buying a VHS of it I want to say the late 80s, early 90s, and just watching it a lot. And so it got a lot of replay value, and it still holds up. It's like I bought the Blu-ray. I'm like, yeah, I never get tired of this one. It's because it has all those elements. It has a lot of elements that I like a lot. And whether it's the sweetness, the silliness, the hijinks, the New York, and all everything mixed together. It's interesting seeing him in this movie, Michael Keaton, and like the parallels of his breakout movie here in 82 and Eddie Murphy having a breakout movie in 82 as well, and then them having such big careers in the 80s. Like you can see, yeah, 80s, it really started in 82 for them. Um, okay, and then Swamp Thing came out that week, Wes Craven's comic book movie. Um, I saw it and I remember like thinking that it was okay. But not like I remember liking the character Swamp Thing. Not thinking much else about the movie, kind of forgetting a lot of the movie. And then watching it over the years, like and liking it, appreciating it more over time, and kind of like what I was trying to say, like the ecological angle to it, and Wes Craven is kind of smart in the way he incorporates like his themes, and he does it in a way it's kind of sly. You don't think about it as much as there. And sometimes, he was kind of definitely a director that didn't get appreciated for that stuff when he imbued it into like genre films like Swamp Thing. But yeah, I don't know. I like Adrian Bowe in it a lot. I mean, she's not given maybe the bet like a lot to do, but she's good when when she is given things to do. Has good villain in it. It's memorable. The memorable villains in general, like um, you got David Hess as a villain. Um, the guy who was in he was like in Dark Man and
Good henchman in this movie. I
Good
don't remember.
Henchman. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
really
Some good henchmen beating up on Swamp Thing a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. It's like mad scientist movie, kind of mixed with ecological horror almost, and then Adrian Barbeau. And then if you watch the international version, you see a lot more of Adrian Barbeau. Um, so for international markets, this movie they filmed nudity. It was released PG here in the U.S. and then elsewhere it had a she showed her boobs, and but then we didn't get that in the U.S. Version. And then on the first DVD came out, they accidentally released the international cut on the DVD. So once they realized that, pretty quickly they recalled them. So for those who are lucky to get a DVD with the international cut, they got to see more boobage because they haven't since released it in the US. So the Scream Factory Blu-ray was the PG cut or whatever. But I have that MGM DVD with the boobs, and that's what I watched. So if you want to see boobs, you get to see track down the Swamp Thing international cut. Dude.
I rewatched Dreamscape a couple years ago, and I distinctly remember boobs in
Mm-hmm.
this that I saw on HBO. And so you look up the different versions. It's like, yes, this was indeed cut out. And the most recent one was watching Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation. I was like, I definitely remember some other shots of
Oh yes, I remember that too. How dare they try to take away the boobs from us? And then on July 30th, they didn't play in New York, but I played in some markets. Tex. So I just had to write that down because I think I left it off my list initially. Tex with Matt Dillon. August 6th, Lola, the Fassbinder film, came out in art houses, as well as art houses. Pink Floyd The Wall, which has become kind of a cult, definitely a cult movie. I did not see that in theaters. I did not see that on home video. I eventually saw it on DVD a lot later on in my life. I was not a Pink Floyd guy, so it was a little bit lost on me, but I appreciated when I did catch up with it eventually for its striking visuals, obviously, and music. Do you like that one?
I very barely remember that one. It was definitely a cult movie. It was kind of a midnight movie. It's sort of a forgotten cult movie. You don't hear that much about it, or at least I don't hear that much about it anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do remember this thing playing it at midnight shows quite frequently when I was growing up. Um, and I love the album. I'm not like a huge Pink Floyd guy, but I love the Pink Floyd album. But I don't really remember the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely got great visuals, and I can see why it became like a cult movie for sure. Um, a movie I did see in the theater, the pirate movie. I enjoyed the pirate movie as a kid. I wasn't a pirate. You know, there were kids who were like really into pirates. There's kids who were really into dinosaurs and sci-fi. I was weirdly none of those. I was none of those kids, but I really enjoyed the pirate movie. I remember just like having fun as a kid and just getting caught up in its silliness and music and another full out musical. There was quite a few this summer, which is of course you go a little further into the 80s, like they were replaced with like different kinds of musicals and then eventually no musicals. But it was nice to have these kinds of like old fashioned kind of musicals, and of course this one being a take on the Pirates of Penzance and um yeah, it was fun, and it was like immediately kind of hated, I guess, on arrival, and got like a lot of Razzies and whatever nominations. I don't know. I don't care what how people dismissed it. I had fun watching it, and then I continued to have fun watching it over the years, and I rewatched it recently, and I'm like, this movie is even more fun than I remember. So the power of the pirate movie, it compels me. Did it compel you?
Yes, it's so goofy, but just unabashedly so. I really liked the guy who played the Pirate King, Ted Hamilton. There's What a
Mhm.
Date with Tad Hamilton
Oh
as
yeah.
Ted, something like that. But yeah, I liked him quite a bit. It's a fun movie. Songs are fun. Um, yeah, I enjoyed this movie, but I just kind of missed the whole. Uh, I missed this movie. This was not on my radar as a kid at all.
Yeah, I mean because it was like a expensive flop. It could disappear pretty quickly. I think 20th Century Fox again. Was putting out a lot of those like expensive flops. I don't know. Yeah, to me, it's like held up well and even better, like I said. So I'm really into pirate movie. It needs to be put back into circulation by I guess now Disney. Disney owns it, so you can release it streaming for kids on their Disney Plus thing. It has some naughty things in it, but it's really like still kind of PG-ish. Um, and it's got Chrissy McNichol, so can't go wrong there. Things Are Tough All Over, the Cheech and Chong movie came out the same day, and I was into Cheech and Chong movies, but not like super into Cheech and Chong movies growing up. So there were like quite a few of them. And I enjoyed this one. Actually, we watched it today, and I'm like, yeah, this is a fun movie. Like, why aren't more movies like 90 minutes of like hijinks and characters like playing they play multiple characters in the movie, so it's kind of fun to see that. And there's some questionable like ethnic stereotypes in it, but other than that it's still like silly Cheech and Chong antics, and you can't go wrong. I think I gotta need to do like a Cheech and Chong podcast going through all the movies. I think I'm gonna do it at some point. So now that I own every single Cheech and Chong movie, I gotta do it eventually. Have you seen it?
No, I don't think I've seen that one. I think I've seen bits and pieces though. I do remember the multiple characters, but I don't think I've seen the whole thing. The Cheech and Chong movies that I remember, it's more like I remember bits of them.
Yeah.
I I've seen Up and Spoke all the way through, and then I remember bits. I remember the bit with Paul Rubens in another one of the movies, and I remember uh, very well one of the bits from the Corsican Brothers, but I
Hmm.
don't the movies like all the way through. It just kind of like maybe I'll watch a scene or two here and there on TV.
It's easy to confuse them too. Like I can't keep track of which came from which either. but I'm gonna try that podcast. We'll see. On August 13th, Chilly Scenes of Winter got a re-release after kind of a failed release in the late 70s for that one. They tried retitling it and didn't work, and then they re-released it back with the Chilly Scenes of Winter title. And um, yeah, I didn't catch up with this movie until much later on. I think it was at Kim's Video when I rented it back in the 90s, and I was going through Joan Micklin Silver's movies, hadn't already been a fan of Crossing Delancey and Loverboy. So like, okay, I got to check out what else she made, and this was one of the ones she made in her earlier career, and I really like it. I really like it. Oh, okay. Iconic films coming up right here. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, I've said a lot about Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I just did an 80s teen sex comedy podcast. I didn't include this one because I've talked about it so much on podcast, but I love Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Slow burn movie because it did okay when it came out, but it kind of disappeared quickly. And then eventually, I think on cable and home video, that's when it really found its footing and hold on to the zeitgeist of the time, and eventually, just people would rent or watch it a lot and quote it, and it became a big thing. And for me, strangely, it's a movie that I appreciated more over time. Like, I wasn't my favorite teen comedy growing up, and then eventually, like, oh yeah, this is um kind of a great teen comedy. This is like one of the best ones, and I love it. How about for you?
Yeah, I definitely didn't appreciate it as much growing up as I do now. Um, I've watched it here and there, and I definitely love a lot of elements of the movie, like the cast of characters and the way that the characters are developed, like Damone, for example. Terrific stuff. But it's never been one of my all-time favorites, but I do really appreciate it. And I did get to see it at the theater just a month ago. We were talking about that a month ago. It's gosh, that cast is just stacked. It's amazing. And one of the things I really love about it now is just the way that it deals with serious issues, frank in a frank way, but it doesn't get bogged down, um, and doesn't really seem to be judgmental about them. A very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, to me, masterfully directed by Amy Heckerling, who just allows things to play out um, in real ways, while also having to make like a silly movie at times, and it's juggling a lot of things and the great music. I mean, just really, she did a really good job with that movie, and I mean, she made two, great films into the teenage comedy genre, and Fast Times and Clueless. So I really respect that. Like, I love her stuff. Friday 13 Part 3, or Friday 13 Part 3D. This was the I alluded to it earlier. This was the 3D movie of the year for me. Of that batch, there were quite a few 3D movies, and this is the one that really stuck out in my head, stuck out the screen. I don't have any popcorn to pop at you guys, and or eyeballs to throw at you, but it really, like, it's, yeah, obviously silly. It was Friday 13th movie with 3D and like the weird like silliness that they're throwing at you to get a reaction, but it's charming because it does that. It's just like a yo-yo in 3D. It's like so charming. But also, I guess what made it great as a kid was I guess I didn't know at the time the process. They used a special process, and it was like so good, the 3D. Like, it was like, it wasn't the anaglyph, I guess, 3D, the red and the blue. It was this new process, and that they specially formulated for this movie, and it was like really, really good 3D, and it really, really sucked you into the movie, and you didn't get a headache after watching it, which is nice, like you did with the red and blue ones. And yeah, I loved it immediately on release of this movie, and I think I watched it twice in the theater because of that, because I wanted to get that 3D high again. And yeah, it's a Friday 13 movie. It's a fun Friday 13 movie. It's the one where Jason gets his mask, and I have a little Jason somewhere in here, somewhere in there. He's hiding. I'll look for him. He's in there somewhere. Yeah, I really enjoy that movie. What about you?
Oh yeah. What I love is just the crassness of the gags. Like it's just in your face. It's like you watch movies that are 3D now, and they're subtle, they're layered. And this is just no, Yo-Yo is coming right at you, coming back, coming at you, an eyeball. That was just what was so much fun for me. It's a fun Friday the 13th movie. It's the one that they probably spent the most time shooting, because getting the 3D right was just an arduous process. And like you mentioned, that's the one where he gets the hockey mask. Oh, and of course the theme, it's the disco theme, which is the theme of any of the Friday guys.
Also an odd choice for 1982 when disco was definitely out by then, but
Yeah.
it works. You remember it, so it's hard to forget that music. Yeah, I mean it was a really fun experience. One of my favorite film going experiences growing up was seeing Friday 13th Part 3 because of the 3D. A movie called The Nest came out, and The Soldier. It was a Glickenhaus movie. It's a fun movie. And then Star Wars was re-released that week. Had multiple re-releases. Star Wars. That was every few years. I feel like every year or two they would really re-release Star Wars. I remember that as a kid. I can't remember if I went to see the re-release back then. I know I went to see it in 79 or 80 maybe. So I know I saw Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back maybe the same year. But I didn't need to go see it again, but because I wasn't a Star Wars kid, but it was re-released. And then the Tempest, the Paul Mazursky version, came out that week as well. I didn't revisit it for the podcast because I didn't realize it was so long. Okay. So when I mentioned Conan earlier in the podcast, there was another movie, Conan-esque movie, The Beastmaster. That was the one of the two that I was more excited about. I don't know why, but something about The Beastmaster drew me in, and yeah, I kind of really, really loved it from the beginning. I remember seeing it at the theater. Like I just kind of love this movie. I don't know why. More than like say Conan or some of the other fantasy movies of the time, but yeah, maybe because it was Coscarelli, and it's kind of like the way he crafts his films, and yeah, it's hard to say because it's not like a Mark Singer fan, or certainly Tanya Roberts was very appealing to watch, and it's but fun villain. It's got the animals, and yeah, I don't know, something about it really kind of entertained me, so I was really hooked. And I watched it quite a few times over the years, and again, I can't pinpoint exactly what I love about it, but I know I love it, so it's kind of one of those curious things. I love the Beastmaster, and I have that deluxe Blu-ray 4K thing from Vinegar Syndrome. It's quite a package.
Yeah, that's like a Cadillac 4K release. Slipcover, but the slipcover has its own slipcover.
It's like mind blowing.
Yeah, I know what you mean about this versus Conan, because as a kid, this had more appeal because of like the animal stuff. It was just, yeah, that's like, oh, this is really really cool.
I guess I can relate to the animal stuff more than say some of the sword and sorcery of Conan. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And we were talking about how these movies were on all the time. And this wasn't my experience, but there is that joke about HBO stands for, hey, Beastmaster's on.
Yeah, I noticed when I listen to the Joe Dante podcast, he likes to say that a lot, which is kind of funny because I guess he had that experience too.
Yeah, it was more like Star Trek 2 and Rocky 3 were on all the time.
Oh yeah, like the sequels. I remember. Yeah, that's really like sequels were so big then, and because they were played all the time. It's true. Also that day, another big movie for me, Class of 1984, which I have talked about in this podcast, so I'm not going to go too in deep with it. But yeah, I mean, I just loved it as a kid. I don't know why. It was a really like shockingly violent movie. It has like rape and revenge and gritty and mean and tough and exploitation-y and all being while being like a high school setting. Maybe because of that, I was so into high school movies as a little kid and an older kid, and now still, yeah, so many all those ingredients together. It's like it's a really good like revenge exploitation film, and Perry King and Roddy McDowell and the kids are like they're fun to watch. Like they're mean and terrible and but also fun. I love it. And it's held up for me over the years. Like it really feels like a just a time capsule of the 80s and what those kinds of movies could do, like exploitation movies of the 80s and like the effect that they could have on you or in your psyche and while also be very entertaining and yeah, it's it's I don't know if it was ever meant to be anything more than it is, but it's kind of like held an importance uh for me over the years and because I had such a strong connection to it as a kid and yeah, I really love it. And so actually, I haven't seen a retro screening of this one, so I don't think it gets screened that often. I would definitely go see it. Have you seen it in theater
I
or
have,
at all?
yeah, I've seen it one time all the way through, and I started watching it again today, but I sort of ran out of time. And I think this is one of those movies where, as a kid, it has this reputation that like you're sort of afraid of, like
Yeah,
about the violent teenagers. It really kind of hit home. It's sort of like the Warriors in that way. It's like I hadn't seen the Warriors, but I heard all this stuff about the gangs and like the theaters and like violence happening in the theaters. It sort of like takes on a lore of its own.
sure.
So I knew quite a bit about this movie, the plot points, but I just hadn't seen it for quite a while. Um, and I only recently watched it actually all the way through, and I had a ball with it. It was really good. I love Tom Holland, the screenwriter, um, terrific. Mark Lester, the director. It's really just top to bottom, just grade A exploitation fun.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Michael J. Fox in an early role.
Right.
The Alice Cooper song is really memorable. It's got a lot of great ingredients to it. And a Canadian movie, kind of exploitation. So there you go. And then also a cult movie from that period, that week. Oh, another three cult movies in a day. Wow, Summer Lovers, which was the teen. Well, I guess they're a teen or older, a little older. In Greece movie, directed by the director of Greece, Randall Kleiser. Randall Kleiser going to actual Greece, and everyone getting naked for 2 hours. I mean, with fun Euro pop music, disco music, and good looking actors, Peter Gallagher and Daryl Hannah and the third lead, like naked and Grease, and you know, it's a very simple movie, right? In that regards, it's about those relationships and time in your life, when you're younger and in a foreign country, and yeah, I don't know. It's like experience, like movie you have to experience. Like this one, I think it actually played in cable a good amount because it was one of those movies that they played on cable because it had a lot of naughty bits, and so they play late nights a lot. So you can get to stay up. If you stayed up past midnight, you see a lot of boobs and Summer Lovers. I like Summer Lovers a lot. I think it's good. It's not like it's never going to be remembered as a great movie, but a time capsule of that period. And yeah, I think it's good. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it all the way through. I did see some of it as a kid, and I was just remembering that it was just like in my mind, it was just like wall to wall nudity. It was
Pretty
it was
much, yeah.
a lot.
Pretty much
But
whatever they can get away with an R rating. Yeah, they did. And it's like the music's good. It's a good soundtrack. All right, getting to the end here. August 27th, two movies, Le Beau Marriage and Homework. Homework is a new movie I'd never seen before. So I was like kind of curious about it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch Homework. I watched like I think like some shitty version on YouTube. And it's a Joan Collins movie. It's like but it's also a teen sex comedy.
mhm.
So teen sex comedy, Joan Collins movie. It's like a little bit schizophrenic. And then I looked up the history of it. It was basically started out as a Joan Collins movie from 1979, and they kind of and then when they went back and added stuff to it and made like almost like like another storyline to it. So it is schizophrenic because it's like a Frankenstein together movie, and then they added like nude scenes for Joan Collins that she wasn't authorized because she didn't make a movie like that kind of movie, but it became a movie suddenly became a movie with a lot of boobs in it, and a nude double for Joan Collins, and it's a weird movie. I don't know if I'd watch it anytime again, but it was fun watching it, like seeing a 1982 movie that felt like a 70s movie, a 70s exploitation movie with teenagers who looked way too old to be teenagers kind of situation. But that's very indicative of the time period. Those are the movies that were popular. I'm just gonna look at the box office for the summer just to give you an idea what was just for the summer, not for the year. E.T., of course, was number one by far that summer. Rocky 3 was the number two movie of the summer. Star Trek 2 was number three. Poltergeist was number four. The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was number five. These are all like big hits. Six was Annie, again, a movie that made money, but cost a lot too. Seven was Firefox. Eight was An Officer and a Gentleman. Nine was Conan. And 10 was Porky's. Even though Porky's wasn't a summer movie, it was a spring movie, it played well into the summer and past the summer. And it made a lot of book of its money in the summer. So it's another movie that held on for a very long time because it was Porky's. So that was popular. And then I'm gonna look at lists from pals of the show. So you gotta bear with me while I do like internet searches for Facebook and Instagram. Facebook and Patreon page. Let me do Patreon page first, maybe. I didn't have it all set up, so I was going to verify the device. Okay, so why don't you talk about something from '82?
Okay. You want me to just run through my list while we're
Yeah, let's hear your top 10 of '82.
okay. Yeah, we'll start with number 10. My number 10 movie was Poltergeist, and that is one that a whole lot of people probably will have much higher on their lists. But it's not as big a movie for me, but a lot of people love it quite a bit. And then number 9, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. We talked about that. I love just the music and just all of the actors, the amazing cast. And then number 8, Friday the 13th, Part 3. Just all the gags, just so much fun. Number 7, I thought this would be higher on my list, but it's gone down a little bit because this was the one that I really grew up with, and more of a Rocky 3 person than a Rocky 4 person. But number 7, Rocky 3. Number 6, Blade Runner, and that's there because we talked about this movie being a little cold to it, admiring it more than loving it. Number 5, a movie that was higher on the list than I thought it was going to be. Just whenever I was just conceiving this list, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, a big one for me as a kid, holds up amazing still. Number 4, The Road Warrior, and then this is maybe the most surprising one, just because of how high it is. Number 3 is Night Shift for me.
Nice. Wow.
Just like how it's like right behind two very big films for me. But yeah, number 3, Night Shift, love every bit of it. Number 2, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and this could have gone either way, but I think just right now, this summer, it's number 2, and what might have been number 2 last year is now number 1. But they go back and forth. But number 1 is the movie behind me. It's The Thing.
You gotta have The Thing. All right. Okay, reading off lists. Daniel Archer, who we just did the teen sex comedy podcast together. He wrote in, like all of them, who can make a top 5 out of all these movies? And then he wrote in, okay, top 5 favorites. Let's get stoned movies from summer 82. Number 5, Things Are Tough All Over. Number 4, Zapped. Number 3, Fast Times. Number 2, Poltergeist. And number 1, Friday the 13th Part 3D. Party on, Chuck and Chili. Party on. I like the stoner take on the list. That's fun. Tristan Lofting. I have a story instead. I saw Annie after Firefox was out, and the somewhat older kid sitting next to me told me all about it while we were waiting for Annie to start. I've never forgotten that. Quentin Dunn. What a great topic. The summer of 1982 was a truly magical moment for the movies. Here is my list that I'm sure will be unoriginal as it is heartfelt. Number 10, Tex. Number 9, Pink Floyd The Wall. Number 8, Night Shift. Number 7, Conan the Barbarian. Number 6, Blade Runner. Number 5, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Number 4, Poltergeist. Number 3, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Number 2, The Thing. And number 1, An Officer and a Gentleman. P.S. It's been forever since I saw Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, so I can barely remember it. That said, I'm sure the next time I do see it, it will find its way into my top 10 since so many people love it so much. And Demetrios Patsiaris. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Conan the Barbarian, Poltergeist, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Tron, Blade Runner, The Road Warrior, The Thing, The Pirate Movie, and Firefox. Thank you guys for writing those in on Patreon. And then on the Facebook page, Chris Stanton, not too original, but in order. Number 1, Poltergeist. 2, my favorite movie of all time. 2, E.T. 3, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. 4, The Thing. And 5, The World According to Garp. Brad Yasuda, no order. E.T. spent 10 minutes hiding under my head under a jacket after the first meetup. The Pirate Movie, Pink Floyd The Wall, Tron, The Thing, Megaforce, Blade Runner, Khan, Poltergeist, Visiting Hours, Wrong is Right, An Accurate Guess at Today, Conan the Barbarian, and The House Where Evil Dwells. I like me some cheese. Derek Abbott, Fast Times, E.T., and The Wall are my all-time favorites in my house. But if you had to talk about any movies from 1982, of course, I'd want to highlight Zapped, The Pirate Movie, and Homework, which is the only movie on your list that features Wings Hauser. Right, it was in that. Sue Shippers. Number 5, Annie. Number 4, Rocky 3. 3, E.T. 2, The Thing. And number 1, Poltergeist. R. Alishan. Class of 1984. E.T. Poltergeist, Swamp Thing, and of course, my all-time favorite film, The Thing. I guess I'll ignore the re-releases to keep it simple. Here's a shameful admission that is bound to get me banned from future episodes, but I have never really gotten into Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Well, other than a certain poolside scene, but I digress. James Benge, Poltergeist, Grease 2, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Zapped, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Homework. Leo Logan, E.T., Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Blade Runner, An Officer and a Gentleman, Tron, Star Trek 2, Rocky 3, Conan the Barbarian, and The Secret of Nim. And Steve Cozier, E.T., Rocky 3, Poltergeist, The Thing, Fast Times, Dead Men, Don't Wear Plaid, and Mad Max 2. Kieran Edwards, not including re-releases. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, The Road Warrior, Chan is Missing, Poltergeist, The Wrath of Mr. Rourke. Toby Wallen. Oh yeah, Mr. Rourke from Fast Island. E.T., The Thing, The Last American Virgin, Night Shift, Pink Floyd, The Wall, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Friday 13th Part 3D, and of course, Raw Force. Sarah Haggard. 5, The Last American Virgin. 4, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. 3, Annie. 2, Poltergeist. And number 1, Grease 2. Love that it's so high on someone's list. Jeannie Hall Cameron. I have always had a soft spot for The Last American Virgin. And Henry DeSalvo. 1982 was a great music and movie year. Yes, it was indeed. Thank you guys for writing your lists. They're all great. I love reading them all. Did I have any more lists? No, I think it's my top 10. All right. Okay, for number 10, first off, I'm giving props to Visiting Hours and Humongous because they're not my top. It's not my top 10, but Canadian horror needs to get mentioned. So my number 10 is a double feature of Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and Friday 13 Part 3. Because the 2 of my favorite sequels of the year. Number 9 is Annie. Number 8 is The Last American Virgin. Number 7 is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. 6 is Class of 1984. 5 is Night Shift. 4 is The Thing. 3 is Poltergeist. 2 is Grease 2. Sorry, guys. I had to put it high. And number 1, of course, is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. All right. Those are our lists. We're sticking to them for now. They'll change. They always change. This was fun talking about the summer of 82. What a great year. What a great summer.
Yeah, so many movies that could have been in the top 10 list, but just didn't quite make it for me, but just a great summer.
Such a good summer. I mean, only to be rivaled by the summer of 2022 releases. Although it's been okay.
This League of Super Pets, yeah, all that stuff.
It's been decent for some horror movies lately, but yeah, not the same ballpark. No, not even close. But yeah, we celebrate these movies, 40 years of watching these movies, 40 years of pure love for so many good films and memories. I mean, it really boils down to memories. So we get a lot of gain a lot of memories from these films, and they would connect to them on different levels. So what's great about it. So it was fun just to going through the calendar with you. Thank you for doing this. It was fun.
It was fun. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon, guys. And where can people find you?
Oh gosh, what am I doing right now? Still programming movies at Circle Cinema in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Doing hopefully working on a double feature of Paul Verhoeven, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers has an anniversary this year, I believe, so that's kind of up next.
Oh wow, yeah, I'd love to see that on the big screen again. I saw it in the theater, of course, when it came out in '97. But I would love to go. Yeah, I wish I was near Tulsa. So when in Tulsa, guys, go check out the Circle Cinema, and especially go to the screenings that you're a part of. They're amazing. I love that. So yeah, you can find the podcast, of course, on all the platforms. The Facebook page, you can reach out. Retro Movie Love is a Facebook page. Instagram, I have one as Cinema de Meep. I have a personal Facebook page as Meep Parker. Look for me there. You can reach out, and then of course, if you want to support this podcast on Patreon, you could do that. Patreon.com/Retro Movie Love. You get all these bonus episodes. We're up to like 46, 7. Like There's a lot. We're gonna have clips, regular episodes at some point. So you get a free. We get a bonus episode every month if you contribute at least $1 a month, which is that's what they require. And then you can watch these video podcasts. Just an extra little bonus too. So it's kind of cool. So do that and reach out to us and tell us more about 82, what your experiences are more. And those of you who want to give their lists and you get a chance to do a list, you can reach out to us on those pages and hear more about 82 in your summer. And we'll be back for more retro movie love soon. Thank you guys for everything. I'm going to take the skeleton and bury it properly. I'm not going to just move the headstones. Take care. Watch out for that thing behind you. Ciao for now.